Almost a year ago, at the end of August 2019, I moved to an apartment in a different city. I made this move because of my mother, who I lived with in my hometown, passed away from cancer. I moved here with my long-term boyfriend and another roommate, who has been a good friend of ours since before we started dating. We all love it here. The location is great. It's a 15-minute bike ride from my university, and we're situated in a square with a grocery store, drugstore, lunchrooms, and more. We have everything we need within a walking distance. However, after just a month or two of living here, someone started ringing our doorbell exactly at 11:05, semi-regularly. Sometimes it happens every day, other times every other day, and occasionally there's a week or two between incidents, but it's always at 11:05 p.m. Each time, I ask through the intercom who it is, but I get no response. Except for one time, but I'll explain that later. At first, I thought it might be friends of our neighbors accidentally ringing the wrong doorbell. But after about the fourth time, I grew suspicious, especially since it was always at the same time. My boyfriend and roommate both work at bars and usually get home around 2 a.m., so I was alone each time it happened. It really started to freak me out. When I first told them about it, they shrugged it off as a wrong dial, like I initially thought. But when I explained that it happened so frequently and sometimes daily, they didn't really believe me and thought I was just paranoid. Then one night, the doorbell rang again. When I answered the intercom and asked who it was, I heard a very heavy breathing. I was quite freaked out, as once again I was home alone. I kept asking who they were and what they wanted. I couldn't tell from the breathing if it was a man or a woman, but I heard strange mumbling or whispering before it went dead silent. They seemed to have left. I double-locked my apartment door after that. I felt quite scared and spooked. Thankfully, my roommate got home a little earlier that night, about 30 minutes after the doorbell rang, and he could see how upset I was. Now, with the corona crisis, my roommate and boyfriend couldn't work anymore, so they started witnessing the doorbell ringing. They now believed me and agreed that it was very odd and creepy. We have a balcony that overlooks the front door of our apartment building, but a shop below us has awnings that partially obscures the view. Every time the doorbell rang, we would go to the balcony to see if we could spot anyone, but we never could. I also asked my neighbors if they experienced the frequent doorbell ringing, but those I spoke to had never had it happen to them. 2 weeks ago, my roommate decided to investigate. He went outside our apartment building at 11 p.m., stood across the street, and pretended to smoke while keeping an eye on the door. He saw a man who looked suspicious wandering around the building. The man slowed down significantly when he approached our door, but when he saw my roommate look at him, he quickly walked away. We're not 100% sure if that's the guy, but we are very suspicious. Since that day, our doorbell hasn't rung at night. I hope it stops for good. However, there's still a possibility that it might start again in a few weeks. Maybe not so creepy to the general public, but it definitely made me nervous at the time. When I was about 12 years old, in 2007, I was home alone babysitting my 2 younger sisters while my parents were away at an event. It was summertime, so it stayed light out for a while in the evening. Just as it was starting to get dark, I went to the kitchen to make a bowl of popcorn. When I looked out the kitchen window, I saw that there was a car parked, hiding in the tree line of our front yard. For context, we live in a fairly rural place, and we rarely had people out our direction. unless they lived down our gravel road, but in that case, we knew the neighbors' cars. This was a junky beater, and the license plates had been taped over, so it was not one of our neighbors. I was a kid who was pretty aware of my surroundings, and I decided to step back from the big kitchen window and go into the dark entryway hall to get a better look. There was just a single man, sitting and staring in the car directly at the house with the lights off. Immediately, I locked the front and back door. I calmly told my brother and sister to play in their room and not to come out until I got them for the movie night. I then went back to the kitchen to get the phone to call my mom, but she didn't answer. I watched him through the curtains sit in the dark tree line and stare at the house for what felt like ages. Finally, someone drove down our road and their headlights reflected off the car. He started the engine, drove out of the trees, and booked it down the gravel. I was still very nervous and tried calling my mom again. No answer. So for the rest of the time, I just played with my siblings in their room with the doors shut and the curtains pulled until my parents came home later that night. When I tried telling my parents what happened, they were convinced I was making it all up and I was just being a dramatic kid. I swore up and down that I saw this car with blacked out plates in the tree line, and they weren't interested at all. I know what I saw, but I'm the only one who did. Maybe it was just some random guy who didn't know there were 3 young kids home alone, hiding for some reason. But I'm still glad I locked all the doors. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I have also lived on my own for a long time, so I do not get scared easily. I had just finished reading in bed, and I turned my lamp off, settled down to go to sleep, and hugged my cat close to me. This would have been about 1:30 in the morning. I closed my eyes, and I heard a voice say, "Meow," like imitating a cat. My window was open, so I thought it was just someone being weird outside. I opened my eyes, and in the middle of my bedroom was a small boy wearing a red jumper, waving his arms above his head. I leapt up like a ninja and put the light on. Now, my heart was going mad. Nothing paranormal has ever happened in this house, even in the entire time I've lived there. I spent the whole night totally freaked out, only getting a bit of sleep when it started to get light outside. My friends thought this was hilarious when I told them. I was saying there is no way I'm living in a haunted house, and started Googling cleansings, exorcists, and whatnot. The next few nights, other weird stuff started happening. I started sleeping with the TV on, and as soon as I tried to get any sleep, I would hear freaky voices coming from it. Or I would notice shadows dip by the sides of my bed. It was dreadful. I actually resorted to saying out loud, asking for them to stop haunting me, and I would be grateful for one night. I had never really believed in any of this sort of stuff before, so it was like seeing an entire paradigm shift for me. Anyway, I was going on about this to my friends at work, and one of them asked me if I was on drugs. Well, funny enough, I had just started taking this new tablet, Montelukast, for my asthma. When I got home, I read the side effects, a rare one being hallucinations. I stopped taking them and, well, no more hauntings.